But once again, the topic of tonight's program is biology and nutrition and the science behind the science. And joining us right now is a guy who I had on the television program a couple of weeks ago. And he's here right now joining us in conversation right now with Franko-Biology. What's up, Franco?
How you doing, Aaron?
How's it going, buddy? You doing well?
I'm doing great. I don't have soccer to watch anymore.
So we had Franco on Your Pet, Your Vet on Rogers TV a couple of weeks ago, and Franco was in promoting a lot of his material. He had a big 2-week stay or a week stay or 10-day stay in Canada and Eastern Canada promoting all of his stuff. And I was so amazed with the stuff that he was talking about on air that I definitely wanted to have him on Animal House Radio. Obviously, we are the leader in pet entertainment in Canada, and Franco seems to be the leader in biology and nutrition, the science behind science. The man.
The interesting thing is that, my primary focus is it's nutrient-gene interactions and how the nutrients interact with our genes to turn certain genes on and to moderate other genes in terms of how they affect disease, how they prevent disease. And it's mainly on human health. But, as we know,
we have a couple of diets in our clinic that are based on nutrigenomics, and I'm sure you had part to do with those, potentially.
Hills is now, you're talking about the Hills.
JD, yep.
Yeah, they've moved into nutrigenomics up to about 3 to 4 years ago. They started working on nutrigenomics.
Right.
And it's becoming a huge validator in the industry because a lot of our supplements that you see even in the human health food store for decades, even vitamin C, chondroitin, glucosamine, all these things we've known have a certain effect on the body and can work if used properly. The problem is, in the past, it's been hit and miss.
Right.
And the reason is that now we're actually identifying some of the pathways and how these nutrients affect genes. And once you understand these pathways in the biochemistry, you're able to use the combinations in much greater precision to activate genes that may go dormant with age. One specific one that we all are aware of is the interaction between chondroitin and the cells that manufacture collagen. I mean, we have better understood in the last 7 years how to turn those genes on.
Right.
And not only treat disease, but now prevent it in breeds that we know are vulnerable to, say, hip dysplasia and other conditions that are joint-related.
Right.
So I want to start this conversation off. I want to just start this off in terms of, let's start it off in a basic conversation, obesity.
You look at North America, the human population, we're looking at a 26 to 28% rate of obesity, and we're starting to see that that's exceeding 28 to 30% in our pet population.
Oh, easily. As
we bring them closer into our family environment, they start to adopt our lifestyles, and let's face it, type 2 diabetes and in the human population and obesity are lifestyle related. And so we start to see a lot of these conditions develop in our pets, and in fact we're seeing the frequency greater in our pets because there are a lot of dietary elements also compounding the lifestyle issues with our pets. We can look at diet and focus on diet and lifestyle. I think we'll eliminate about 80% of the obesity.
And you're saying that depending on the nutritions or certain things that you feed into the genes, it can be prevented earlier on with that type of nutrition?
Absolutely. Here's the interesting thing. I mean, Dr. Mike can attest to this. We look at just, calorie and nutritional intake as a fundamental way to treat obesity and diabetes. That can work very well. But there's a problem here because if humans, for example, or their pets, carry the extra weight for a long period of time,
right,
there are metabolic changes that occur in the body. And so by treating those conditions, like obesity and type 2 diabetes, solely through diet, sometimes it's very difficult because it's hard to change the momentum of that metabolism.
Right.
Research has now shown that there are certain nutrients, in particular vanadium. Vanadyl sulfate has been used in the industry, in our health industry,
yep,
and even in pet foods for a long time. And now they're identifying that in doses that are 1 milligram per pound of human or per pound of animal, 1 milligram, not microgram as it's been used in the past, but that vanadyl sulfate actually jumpstarts the gene responsible for restoring insulin efficiency. And Dr. Mike will probably relate to this. Glucose transport sites, GLUT4 sites, these are the sites on the cells of our tissues that actually respond to insulin. They tend to become desensitized to insulin signal with age and through poor lifestyle and poor nutrition, and that's what results in this insulin resistance and diabetic state in animals. and humans. We call it type 2 diabetes.
Right.
But we are now identifying with these compounds that not only can we change the diet to reduce the strain on insulin and these cells and improve health overall, we can actually jumpstart the body's natural ability to restore the metabolism even before we change the diet. And that's profound chemistry that we can apply in the clinic without having to use insulin as a primary treatment unless you really need the insulin in the long run later on.
Right.
I mean, the way I see things, there are two views in my, I would call it my industry. There are some of those who are really opposed to pharmaceuticals. You know, I'm one who says, look, thank God for pharmaceuticals and conventional allopathic medicine like Dr. Mike, because, you know, most of us will need it at one point or another in our lives.
Right. But there's I mean, I'm just so you know, Franco, from my point of view, I'm right in the middle. I've seen certain, glucosamine, chondroitin, green lipid muscle, all these wonderful L-carnitine, all these natural substances do wonders. So, and yet I've also seen Western medicine do wonders. So
Absolutely.
I'm really not a big believer in being right wing or left wing. I'm kind of right smack in the center. Yeah. I believe there's lots of both around.
You're like whatever works.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, listen, you got a horrible raging infection. You can give me any nutraceutical you want. You ain't going to cut it without a really good antibiotic. Yeah. So
there you go.
You might be able to prevent it later on with a good nutraceutical, but,
Well, here's what I think is happening with this, because our diets are highly processed.
Yes.
And the foods that we're eating, a lot of the natural nutrients the body requires for immune system empowerment are not available in this food. So, I mean, this sounds pretty broad in general, but it actually can be described in quite enough detail that makes sense. What happens is because the immune system then is not able to respond in a balanced way due to the lack of some of these nutrients, then the triggers that may act as allergens can trigger more easily, and the body responds with more profound, what we call a prostaglandin and histamine response.
Right.
We know that we can create a pro-inflammatory effect in the body if a diet that's processed, where the fats are rancid, the polyunsaturated fats. And when we have a pro-inflammatory body, we may not feel disease, but we become more vulnerable to triggers and genetic predispositions to disease.
Right.
One key one, and you've seen this in your practice, Dr. Mike, you can actually treat many histamine-related responses to allergies through anti-inflammatory use, because when we reduce inflammation in the body, the histamine receptor becomes less sensitive to a trigger.
Right.
So what happens to our bodies and our children and in these animals, if that what we call subclinical inflammation has been raised by poor nutrition, then we are more vulnerable to triggers that may be in the environment, like pollution and seasonal allergies. We're more vulnerable, and we react with a more profound immune response, where for those who have a balanced inflammatory cascade in the body through good nutrition will not respond to the allergen or the trigger.